I finished smoothing him out now. I ended up freezing him and then just sprinkling some talcum or baby powder on him and then actually sanding him just with a smooth sandpaper. So it's not absolutely perfect. Some guys would use something like a mineral spirit or an alcohol to smooth the skin further. I've decided to just leave this as is. I'm going to be casting it again. And I thought once I've actually cast in resin, I will just fix up any imperfections and sand the resin. So I'm quite happy with that. So to do the actual mold, I've now actually constructed a nice big box out of Lego. And the idea here is that I will seat him into this box. So let me just do that gently. Okay, so just a bit of a clearance on either side of his head. So the next step, what people would generally do is if you've got, let's say, a piece that you've baked or it's very hard, you would then actually squeeze in some wet clay or a plasticine just along the bottom. I'm going to do a two-part mold. What I've actually decided to do is, because I don't want to squeeze other clay against my model, or my sculpture, which could actually then damage it, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to use gelatine. This is the gelatine I'll be using, so I'll mix that up with a little bit of water and I'll pour that into the box just so that it covers half of the model. And once that sets overnight, I will then pour the silicone on top and let that set as well. And then I'll flip that over, remove the gelatine, and then pour silicone on the back end. I ended up having to rebuild the Lego box. I just found that all the gelatine was actually just leaking through. So I've got my son's Duplo, and I've actually used a lot of plasticine in the corners and everywhere just to seal that up so that it's watertight. And also waited for the gelatine actually to settle a little before I actually started pouring that in. So I'm going to pour that put that into the fridge now. And I have done a test before, so what will happen is this is obviously going to set and be quite a nice firm base. So what's nice here is that it's not going to actually damage my piece because it doesn't contract or anything to that effect. So I will be back in a day. The gelatine has now set, and I've also placed just a few extra little pieces of Lego in there just to add as markers or keys, so they're just slightly raised above the surface. So that will be my the key for the second half of the silicone rubber. So I've also built the wall up now so that it goes well above the face, and I've also just sealed the corners off just to make sure that silicone doesn't run into those corners, because then it will also be difficult to remove that from the mold, and also just gives the mold a slightly rounded edge. So the next step now is to obviously brush on some of the silicone and obviously then fill it up as high as this container. I'm using silicone from Amber Composites. So here I have obviously the uncured silicone rubber, and this is the catalyst, which I'm adding 5%. So I've got that into a container here, 200 mils, and I've added the catalyst. And the next step for me now is just to really stir this in as best I can. And once that's stirred in and mixed, I will have approximately 60 minutes of pot life, which is quite a long time. And then that will take another 10 hours to cure completely. So I will keep cracking at this and I'll be back. Okay, here goes. I have mixed this up thoroughly. Quite a lot of air bubbles in there, just obviously from turning it around. So what I will do is I will just drip it on from quite a height, just to try and get rid of those air bubbles. Oh, and I forgot to spray the silicone. Oh dear. This is my wax. Too keen. Oh boy, let's see what it does. Oh well. So hopefully, because this is a wax-based clay, oh no, well, this is turning out to be quite a mess. I have got here a disposable brush just to make sure that I can try and get the air bubbles away, or at least popping any of the air bubbles on the surface. So I can really just brush that on. As you can see there in the eyes, there were some air bubbles. So just brushing that on. So quite a messy experience, quite a few air bubbles there. I do hope they work their way out. It's quite interesting to see, just as I tap it a little, that some of those air bubbles are working their way out. So hopefully they will have completely removed themselves from the surface. So this is the advantage of the slow pot time, or the long pot time of 60 minutes, is that there's time for the air bubbles to make their way out. Alright, so that's going to be another day, let that cure. A couple of days have now passed and this is fully cured. It actually took a bit longer than 10 hours. I think that's just because my silicone is a little bit old. So what I can see, however, is tiny little pockets or little dimples at the top where the air bubbles have come to the surface and popped. So I'm really hoping that all of those air bubbles moved away from the surface of the model. I've now also removed the base to reveal the jelly. So obviously all the jelly sloshed out and actually came out quite easily. Just to get some of the excess off, I just ran that under some lukewarm water. Just took a soft brush and just brushed away any of the jelly that was left over. I've also now added a sprue at the bottom for a bit of an air vent. So as I pour the resin into the piece, then I have an air vent for the air obviously to push out of, and obviously I've created quite a large sprue in the center here. That will be where I actually pour the resin through. So the next step now is I'm going to build this Lego up a little bit more, just to raise that a bit. I will obviously then seal the edges with a bit of clay again, and I will then pour the next layer of silicone.